If you've seen more than a couple of my videos, you've probably heard me talk about organic paint pottery or Salado Polychrome. And if you don't live in the American Southwest or you're not really familiar with the archaeology of this area, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about. So in this video, I hope to take you deep into the rabbit hole to help explain some of the archaeology of this area, what I mean by Salado Polychrome, and give you my ideas on what was going on here about 1300 AD. Cultural change swept through southern Arizona around 1300 AD, affecting a large area from the Phoenix Valley in the west to the upper Gila in New Mexico. A new type of pottery started to be made at this time called Salado Polychrome. This pottery was different from previous pottery made in this area in several ways. For one thing, it was constructed using the coil and scrape method instead of the paddle and anvil method, which had been favored by the Hohokam. Another way it was different was that the designs used to decorate Salado Polychrome had mostly originated in Anasazi areas far to the north. And finally, it was painted with organic paint, which was a new technology to this area, but had been practiced by the Anasazi for centuries prior to that. This unique pottery type contains clues that help explain the cultural tsunami that archaeologists call the Salado Phenomenon. History, written in the broken sherds, scattered across the desert, waiting to be read by someone who can speak the language of the clay. First, we need to look at the origins of this pottery type to better understand it. The technology of using organic paint, made purely from plant material, originated in the Four Corners area, way back around 500 AD. Organic paint was used by Anasazi potters at that time to produce black on white pottery, which was smothered during the firing to keep the paint from burning away. Then around 1030 AD, along the Puerco River, near present-day Petrified Forest National Park, people from different cultural groups, Anasazi and Mogollon, were living close together and sharing ideas. It was in this time and place that the Anasazi technology of organic paint combined with the Mogollon technology of redware pottery. The resulting pottery was fired not in a smothered underground trench kiln, but on the surface of the ground, allowing the iron-rich clays to oxidize to a bright red color. These Puerco Valley redwares were the first oxidized organic painted pottery ever produced. I'm here at Puerco Pueblo at Petrified Forest National Park. It was here in this area along the Puerco River where Mogollon and Anasazi cultures were living together and mixing that around 1030 oxidized organic paint pottery was first invented. You see, up to that time, all pottery that was painted with organic paint was fired in a limited oxidation atmosphere. That results in the black on white pottery we might associate with Mesa Verde. This method allowed them to make pottery that was red, where the irons in the clay would oxidize to a bright red and still get black organic paint designs. That type continued to be made here along the Puerco River for a couple hundred years. Then, between 1275 and 1300, the whole upper Little Colorado River region, of which the Puerco River is part, was shaken up. At that time, many smaller villages were abandoned as people moved together into larger pueblos that were built around central plazas. In the same time, new pottery styles started to be made. Pinedale Polychrome combined the technology of Cibola Anasazi redware pottery with the new Pinedale style design aesthetic and was made far to the south in what had previously been Mogollon territory. Pinto Black on Red combined the technology of Puerco Valley redwares with the same Pinedale style designs. The innovation of a white slip turned Pinto Black on Red into Pinto Polychrome, the first Salado Polychrome pottery type. About 1275, on the Mogollon Rim, just maybe 100 or so miles away, somebody decided to put a white slip on it instead of red slip, and Salado Polychrome was born. Today I'm at Bailey Ruin, which is just above the Mogollon Rim in central Arizona. There's a lot of archaeological evidence that points to this as the birthplace of Salado Polychrome, the place where that type of pottery was, in essence, invented. In the early 1300s, a similar pattern as that seen in the upper Little Colorado River Basin plays out in the Salt and Gila River valleys in the south. Smaller villages are abandoned in favor of large, plaza-oriented pueblos. At the same time, new pottery begins to be made. Salado Polychrome, the pottery type that originated in the north a quarter century previously, now begins to be made along the Salt and Gila rivers in the south. And as before, pottery made in this new area uses different design aesthetic. This new type is called Gila Polychrome. It seems that whatever had happened in the north in 1275 was now taking place in the south, since the pattern of behavior was nearly identical. But what was happening? Some archaeologists have speculated that these new pottery types that sprang up had religious implications, that they were used in feasting rituals. Around 1320, Kachina images began to appear on pottery and rock art in the upper Little Colorado River area. So it is easy to see a connection between this new Kachina religion and the religiously connected pottery types, Western White Mountain Redwares and Salado Polychromes, that began to be made in the same area just a few years before. The Kachina religion, as practiced today by Pueblo people in New Mexico and Arizona, places a great deal of importance on a pair of mountains near the center of the upper Little Colorado River Basin. This special place, called Wanima or Kaluwalawa, is where some people believe the Kachinas live, and people make regular pilgrimages there to make offerings at shrines. It is near this area, in the center of the upper Little Colorado River Basin, that the special white clay used to make Salado Polychrome most likely came from. Remember, the technology used to create oxidized organic painted pottery like Salado Polychrome was unique. It started along the Rio Puerco and never left that vicinity until the religious movements of the late 13th century carried it south. The clay needed to turn organic paint into black designs is very unique and probably was abundant along the Puerco River and adjacent areas of the upper Little Colorado Valley. This new religion was most likely connected to feasting rituals and pilgrimages to the sacred mountains of Wanima. It would therefore be easy for the people traveling over these pilgrimage routes to carry that special clay home to southern Arizona, where it could be used to make special vessels required for the feasting rituals. As a longtime pottery replicator, and after sampling clays all across the Southwest, I discovered that many of the clays in the upper Little Colorado Valley have that special something that will turn organic paint into black designs, while none of the clays in the Salt and Gila River valleys have that special quality. The nearest source of these special clays to the Salado Polychrome producing villages on the Salt and Gila are near Wanima, 150 miles to the north, an area with a long history of oxidized organic paint pottery, and an area that likely had strong religious connections to these southern villages.
Today I'm at the Reeve Ruin here along the San Pedro River. This is one of those sites that was producing a great deal of Salado Polychrome for export. Salado Polychrome that was made in this area has been found all over the southern Southwest. So while we ponder the mystery of Salado Polychrome, let us remember that certain sites like this one were producing the vast majority of the Salado Polychrome out there. There was something special going on at these sites, something that gives us a clue about what the Salado Phenomenon really was.
Archaeologists have discovered that although Salado pottery was commonly used and traded all over the southern Southwest, it was made only in certain villages. It is conceivable then that these villages were ceremonial centers that imported and controlled the special white clay which was so important in the making of Salado pottery. What then does this imply about the larger Salado phenomenon that involves so much more than pottery, covering things like architecture, village structure, trade, art, and religion across a large area of the southern Southwest?
Today I'm here at the Adamsville Mound. This is typical of one of these platform mounds that appears across southern Arizona, maybe right at the time when Salado Polychromes appear or slightly before. You can see the size of it. It's quite impressive. That's man-made. That is a lot of dirt that has been moved. And you got to remember, these people didn't have beasts of burden. They didn't have heavy digging equipment. This was all dug up using digging sticks and transported probably with baskets. So as far as I'm concerned, it's a fairly clear evidence of either slave labor or religious coercion, some way of getting people to do a great deal of work by some elite group. This was an elite neighborhood up here. This is probably where a ruling class, some sort of elite priests or chieftains lived on top of the mound above the common man who lived in the village below. There's a great deal of pottery to be found here. It's all over. There had to have been a lot of people living here at one time to have left the volume of pottery that's found here.
It would appear then that what is called the Salado Phenomenon is really just some sort of Anasazi imperialism into Hohokam and Mogollon areas of the south. There is abundant, although not irrefutable, evidence. For example, 1. The appearance of platform mounds incorporated with elite neighborhoods. 2. The rapid change to Pueblo architectural forms. 3. The almost complete replacement of local decorated pottery with these new types made with clay slips imported from northern areas and decorated with northern designs. 4. Widespread signs of violence, burned villages, and defensively built villages. 5. The clearing of wide swaths of hinterlands and cultural boundary regions of most or all population. 6. Linguistic religious ties between the O'odham language spoken in southern Arizona and the Zuni language spoken in northern New Mexico. 7. Religious symbology on Salado Polychrome pottery. And 8. The gradual and complete abandonment of the entire Gila River watershed by 1450, with Pueblo groups north and non-Pueblo groups south of this emptied region. This system of Anasazi control was relatively short-lived. Around 1380, Mogollon areas in the north began to see signs of rebellion. Along the Mogollon Rim, burned and abandoned villages began showing up in the archaeological record at this time. By 1400, the whole region that these northerners had taken control over around 1275 was completely abandoned and was never re-inhabited until the Apache moved in sometime after 1600. The same pattern again repeats itself in the south a few years later. Throughout the late 1300s, populations decline along the Salt and Gila rivers as people flee south to escape their Anasazi overlords. Open rebellion then breaks out with the wholesale abandonment of most villages sometime around 1400 and the complete abandonment of the region by 1450 AD. What, you may ask, did the Anasazi have to gain by controlling affairs in the south? The answer is simple: luxury goods. Cotton was in high demand in the northern southwest, but it was difficult to grow in the high desert there, while it thrives in the low desert of the southern southwest. Other luxury goods that came from the south included seashells and items that arrived in trade from Mexico, such as copper bells, parrot feathers, and chocolate. By controlling the southern southwest, they also controlled the trade that originated in or passed through that region, and those trade goods were the source of great power and prestige. Most of the people who had inhabited the Salt and Gila valleys ended up fleeing south to escape domination by the northerners. The Hohokam became the O'odham, and the Mogollon became the Opata. Much of that original homeland was occupied by Apaches by the time the first Europeans began exploring this area.
I know a history lesson like this is not my usual video, so do me a favor. If you enjoyed it, give me a thumbs up. If you're interested in this subject, my book Mud Puzzles goes into much greater detail about the Salado Phenomenon, about the Little Colorado Rebellion of 1380, the Gila Rebellion of 1400, Salado Polychromes, and how I learned these things by doing pottery replication. So if you're interested in checking that out, I'll put the link down in the doobly-doo. If you're enjoying this channel, think about subscribing if you haven't already. That way you know when the next video comes out. I appreciate you coming on my adventure with me today. We'll catch you next time.